Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the blue and green world spin slowly below them. The planet was perfect. Clear oceans covered most of its surface, and thick clouds promised rain and life. Green continents stretched across the world like a gift from the gods themselves. Begin the deep scans, he ordered his crew. The Kethran Empire had been searching for a new sacred world for over 100 years. Their old holy planet was dying, its resources drained by centuries of worship and ceremony. This world could be their salvation. The bridge hummed with activity as his officers worked their stations. The Kethrans were tall beings with dark blue skin and forearms, each ending in delicate hands perfect for their advanced technology. They had ruled this part of space for 3,000 years, and no other species had ever challenged them. "Sir, the scans are complete," reported his science officer. "The atmosphere is breathable for our kind. Water is pure. The soil is rich with minerals we need. There are no signs of intelligent life." Vextar smiled, showing rows of sharp white teeth. "Perfect. Send word to the High Council. We have found our new sacred world. We shall call it Ketha Prime." 3 days later, Jake Murphy was eating his morning meal when the alert came through. He was a commander in the human space fleet, stationed aboard the HMS Endeavour. The ship was old but reliable, designed for long-range exploration and mapping missions. "Commander Murphy to the bridge," came the voice through the ship's speakers. Jake finished his coffee and made his way through the narrow hallways of the survey ship. The Endeavour was much smaller than the military ships, but it had been his home for the past 2 years. The crew of 45 had become like family to him. Captain Lisa Hayes was waiting for him when he arrived on the bridge. She was a tough woman in her 50s who had been exploring space longer than Jake had been. Alive, her gray hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her face showed the lines that came from years of making hard decisions. "What's the situation, Captain?" Jake asked. Lisa handed him a data pad. "We just received a territorial claim from the Kethran Empire. They found a world about 2 weeks from our current position. They're calling it Ketha Prime." Jake read through the claim notice. It was written in the formal language that all spacefaring species used for official business. The Kethrans were claiming complete ownership of the system and declaring it off limits to all other species. "This is in the Perseus Arm," Jake said, looking at the star charts. "We've been mapping this region for months. Some of our survey probes have been operating near that system." "I know," Lisa replied, "but they got there first with a full fleet. We have 1 ship. They have 12, including 3 battleships." Jake understood the problem. Humans were still new to this part of space. They had been exploring beyond Earth for only 300 years, while species like the Kethrans had been traveling between stars for millennia. The human fleet was small and scattered across dozens of systems. "Are we going to challenge the claim?" he asked. Lisa shook her head. "Earth Command wants us to acknowledge it and move on. We can't afford a war with the Kethrans, especially over 1 world." Jake nodded, but something bothered him about the whole situation. He pulled up the survey data from their probes in that region. The information was limited, but it showed a standard class M world with all the basic requirements for life. "Captain, did our probes detect anything unusual about this world?" "What do you mean?" "I'm looking at the preliminary scans from Probe 7 Alpha. There are some odd readings in the geological surveys." Lisa moved closer to look at his screen. "Show me." Jake pulled up the deep ground scans. The probe had only done a basic survey, but it had detected unusual geometric patterns buried deep beneath the planet's surface. The patterns were too regular to be natural formations. "Could be mineral deposits," Lisa said, "or maybe underground cave systems, maybe." Jake agreed, but he wasn't convinced. Something about those patterns looked familiar, though he couldn't place why. Dr. Ben Carter was in his laboratory when Jake found him an hour later. Carter was the ship's expert on ancient civilizations and alien archaeology. He was a thin man with wild brown hair who often forgot to eat when he was working on something interesting. "Ben, I need you to look at something," Jake said, showing him the probe data. Carter studied the readings for several minutes, his eyes growing wider as he worked through the information. "These patterns," he said slowly, "they're not natural." "What do you think they are?" "I don't know, but they're definitely artificial. See how they form perfect geometric shapes? And look at this spacing pattern. It's too precise to be random." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Could they be ruins of some kind? Possibly, but if they are, they're buried under kilometers of rock and sediment. That would make them incredibly old. How old? Carter shrugged. Hard to say without more data. Could be tens of thousands of years, maybe more. Jake left the laboratory with his mind racing. If there were ancient ruins on this world, it changed everything. The Kethrans claimed they were the first intelligent species to find the planet. But what if someone had been there before? Over the next few days, Jake couldn't stop thinking about those buried patterns. He studied every piece of data the probe had collected, looking for clues. The more he examined the scans, the more convinced he became that something important was hidden beneath the surface of Ketha Prime. The problem was that the Kethrans had claimed the world. Any attempt to investigate further would require their permission, and they were unlikely to give it. They saw humans as a young and weak species, barely worth their attention. But Jake had spent his entire career exploring the unknown. The idea that ancient secrets were buried on that world was too tempting to ignore. He made a decision that would change everything. He was going to find a way to get to Ketha Prime and discover what was hidden beneath its surface, no matter what the Kethrans said about it. 6 months had passed since the Kethrans claimed their new sacred world. Jake Murphy stood at the observation deck of the HMS Endeavour, watching Ketha Prime grow larger on the screen. The planet looked even more beautiful than the first scans had shown. White clouds drifted over blue oceans, and the green continent seemed to glow with life. "Hard to believe they're letting us land," said Dr. Ben Carter, joining Jake at the window. "Ambassador Johnson worked hard for this agreement," Jake replied. "The Kethrans want to show the galaxy how generous they are, letting humans build a small research station makes them look good." The truth was more complicated. Earth's diplomats had spent months negotiating for even this small presence on the planet. The Kethrans saw it as a minor concession that cost them nothing, while making them appear reasonable to other species. On the main continent, the Kethran settlement was already massive. Their ships had been arriving for months, bringing thousands of colonists and workers from orbit. Jake could see the construction of their great temple complex. The building was enormous, with tall spires reaching toward the sky like fingers of stone and metal. High Priest Murthik had declared Ketha Prime blessed by the ancient Kethran gods. The temple would be the center of their new religious capital, a place where Kethrans from across the empire would come to worship. The old sacred world was dying, but this new one would serve their people for thousands of years to come. "Look at the size of that thing," Carter said, pointing at the temple. "It must be 10 kilometers across." "They're not doing anything small," Jake agreed. "This is supposed to be their most important world." The Endeavour landed at the designated human zone on the southern continent, far from the main Kethran settlement. The landing area was basic, just a cleared space with some temporary buildings. It wasn't much, but it was a foothold on the planet. Ambassador Kate Johnson was waiting for them when they stepped off the ship. She was an experienced diplomat in her 40s, with short blonde hair and sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. She had been dealing with alien species for over 20 years. "Welcome to Ketha Prime," she said with a tired smile. "Or should I say, welcome to the small corner of Ketha Prime that humans are allowed to visit." "Any problems with our Kethran hosts?" Jake asked. "Nothing serious. They mostly ignore us, as long as we stay in our designated area and don't interfere with their holy work. They pretend we don't exist." The human research station was small, but efficient. 30 people would work there, studying the planet's geology, weather, and plant life. It was supposed to be a peaceful scientific mission that would help both species understand this new world better. Dr. Carter wasted no time setting up his equipment. Within hours of landing, he was running new scans of the underground formations that had caught their attention months earlier. The results were even more interesting than he had hoped. "Jake, you need to see this," Carter called from his laboratory. Jake hurried over to find Carter staring at his computer screen with excitement. The new scan showed the buried patterns in much greater detail than the original probe data. "The formations are definitely artificial," Carter said, "but look at this. They're not just random structures. They form a network that covers the entire planet." Jake studied the display. The geometric patterns were connected by straight lines that ran for thousands of kilometers. Underground, whatever civilization had built these structures, they had worked on a massive scale. "How deep are they buried?" Jake asked. "Between 2 and 4 kilometers below the surface. The rock layers above them show clear signs of being deposited over a very long time. I'm talking about tens of thousands of years, maybe more." "Could the Kethrans have built them?" Carter shook his head. "Not a chance. These formations are older than their entire civilization. The Kethrans have only been spacefaring for about 4,000 years. These structures predate that by a huge margin. Jake felt that familiar chill again. An unknown civilization had been on this world long before the Kethrans arrived. They had built something massive and then disappeared, leaving only buried ruins to mark their presence. Have you shared this data with Ambassador Johnson? Jake asked. Not yet. I wanted to be sure of my findings first. Don't mention it to the Kethrans yet. Let's see what else we can learn over the next few weeks. Carter continued his underground surveys. He used every piece of equipment they had brought, pushing the limits of their technology to peer deeper into the planet's crust. What he found made the mystery even more puzzling. The buried structures weren't just buildings or monuments. They appeared to be part of a vast technological network that had once covered the entire world. Power conduits, communication lines, and transportation tunnels formed a complex web beneath the surface. Whoever built this, Carter told Jake one evening, they were incredibly advanced. This makes our best cities look primitive by comparison. Any idea what happened to them? None. There's no sign of destruction or warfare. It's like they just left one day and let time bury their work. Meanwhile, the Kethran settlement continued to grow. More ships arrived every week, bringing supplies and new colonists. The great temple was taking shape, its towers rising higher each day. High Priest Murthic held daily ceremonies, blessing the construction and praising the gods for giving his people such a perfect world. Ambassador Johnson kept Jake informed about the Kethran activities. They're planning something big, she reported. Murthic is talking about a grand ceremony to officially consecrate the planet. Leaders from across the Kethran Empire will attend. When? Jake asked. 3 months from now. It's supposed to be the most important religious event in their history. Jake wondered what the ancient builders of the underground city would think about aliens holding religious ceremonies on the surface of their world. The Kethrans believed they were the first intelligent beings to find this planet, but they were wrong. Someone else had been here first. Someone who had built wonders that still lay hidden beneath their feet. Dr. Carter's latest scan showed something that made Jake's heart race. Deep beneath the Kethran temple site, the underground network was most complex. Whatever the ancient civilization had built, the most important parts were directly under where the Kethrans were now constructing their holy site. We need to go deeper, Carter said, studying his readings. I think we're only seeing the top layer of something much bigger. Jake made a decision that would change everything. Do it. Use whatever equipment you need. I want to know what's down there. Neither of them realized that their investigation was about to uncover secrets that would shake both human and Kethran understanding of the galaxy, the truth buried beneath. Ketha Prime was bigger than either species could imagine. Dr. Ben Carter checked his drilling equipment one more time. The massive machine hummed with power, its diamond-tipped drill bit ready to cut through kilometers of rock and earth. After weeks of preparation, they were finally ready to reach the ancient structures buried beneath Ketha Prime. Commander Jake Murphy stood beside him, watching the final preparations. Are you sure about the location? He asked. Positive? Carter replied. The scans show the clearest structure signatures right here. If we're going to find answers, this is our best shot. Ambassador Kate Johnson had argued against the deep drilling operation. The Kethrans had given humans permission to study the surface, but drilling deep into their sacred world might anger them. Jake had overruled her concerns. Some discoveries were worth the risk. The drill began its work at dawn, cutting steadily through layers of soil and stone. Carter monitored every meter of progress, watching for changes in the rock composition. The geological layers told the story of the planet's history, and he read them like pages in a book. We're passing through sedimentary layers that are at least 50,000 years old, he reported. Whatever's down there, it's been buried for a very long time. Hours passed as the drill went deeper. 1 kilometer, then 2, then 3. The Kethran authorities had noticed the operation, but hadn't interfered. They seemed curious about what the humans were doing, but not concerned enough to stop them. At a depth of 3 kilometers and 200 meters, the drill suddenly broke through into empty space. Carter's instruments showed a large hollow chamber. Beneath them, we've hit something, he announced. There's a cavity down there, maybe 10 meters high. Jake felt his pulse quicken. Can we get down there safely? Give me an hour to run safety checks, then we can lower a probe. The probe they set down carried cameras and sensors that would give them their first real look at what lay beneath the planet's surface. Carter, and Jake watched the screens as the probe descended through the narrow drill hole. When the probe emerged into the chamber below, both men stared in shocked silence. The chamber was enormous, stretching beyond the range of their lights. But what they could see was impossible to believe. The walls were covered with smooth metal panels that gleamed despite their age. Strange symbols were carved into the surfaces, and geometric patterns covered the ceiling. "This isn't natural," Carter whispered. "This is architecture." Jake leaned closer to the screen. "Those symbols, do you recognize them?" Carter studied the markings carefully. There was something familiar about them, but he couldn't place what it was. The probe's lights revealed more details as it moved through the chamber. Advanced machinery lined the walls, silent and dark, but clearly built by intelligent hands. "We need to get down there," Jake said. "Are you crazy? That chamber is 3 kilometers underground. One mistake and we're dead. Then we don't make mistakes." It took 2 days to prepare for the descent. They used every safety protocol in the book and invented a few new ones. Ambassador Johnson protested loudly, but Jake was determined. This discovery could change everything humans knew about the galaxy. The elevator platform they rigged was small and cramped, but it carried Jake, Carter, and two security officers safely down the narrow shaft. The journey took over an hour, descending slowly through layers of rock and time. When they finally reached the bottom, Jake stepped into the ancient chamber with wonder and fear in equal measure. The ceiling arched high above them, supported by pillars that seemed to be made of a single piece of unknown metal. The air was stale, but breathable. Carter immediately began studying the wall symbols with portable scanners. "These markings," he said, his voice echoing in the vast space. "I've seen something like them before. Where? Earth. Ancient human sites. But that's impossible." Jake moved deeper into the chamber, his flashlight beam revealing more wonders. Advanced control panels lined the walls, their dark screens like sleeping eyes. Carter's led away into darkness, promising more chambers and more secrets. Then he found something that made his blood freeze. It was a wall covered with star charts, detailed maps showing the positions of hundreds of stars and planets. Jake recognized some of the patterns immediately. There was the constellation humans called Orion. There was the distinctive shape of the Big Dipper. And right in the center of one chart, marked with special symbols, was a familiar yellow star. "Ben," he called, his voice barely steady, "you need to see this." Carter hurried over and studied the star charts. His face went pale as he understood what they were looking at. "That Sol," he said. "That's Earth's sun. Are you certain?" Carter pointed to the surrounding star patterns. "Positive. Look at the constellation markers. This chart shows our entire local stellar neighborhood. And see the symbol next to Sol? It's different from all the others." Jake studied the special marking. It was more elaborate than the other stellar notations, suggesting that this particular star system held special significance for whoever had built this place. "There's more," Carter said, moving to another section of the wall. "These aren't just star charts, they're navigation maps." The maps showed detailed routes between star systems, with specific planets marked along the way. The level of detail suggested that whoever had made them had actually visited these worlds, not just observed them from a distance. Jake found another section that made his knees weak. It was a historical record, written in symbols that were definitely familiar now. He couldn't read the ancient script, but the images were clear enough. They showed spacecraft traveling between stars, colonies being established on distant worlds, and a vast civilization that spanned the galaxy. "Ben," he said slowly, "I think we know who built this place." Carter was examining the control panel that had somehow activated when he touched it. Soft lights began to glow throughout the chamber, revealing details they had missed in the darkness. The technology was incredibly advanced, but there was something about its design that felt familiar. "The symbols," Carter said, his voice filled with awe and disbelief. "They're not just similar to ancient human writing. They are ancient human writing. This is proto-human script, maybe 50,000 years old." Jake looked around the vast chamber with new understanding. The architecture, the technology, the star chart centered on Earth's sun. It all pointed to one impossible conclusion. "This isn't an alien city," he said. "This is human. Our ancestors built this place." Carter nodded slowly. "But that means humans were spacefaring tens of thousands of years ago. We had an interstellar civilization that spanned the galaxy. What happened to it? I don't know. But whatever it was big enough to make our ancestors abandon all of this and retreat to Earth." As if responding to their presence, more systems began to activate throughout the ancient city. Lights came on in distant corridors, and the soft hum of machinery echoed through the chambers. After 50,000 years of silence, the human city beneath Ketha Prime was beginning to wake up. Jake and Carter stood in the growing light, realizing that their discovery would change everything. The Kethrans had claimed humanity's ancestral world as their own sacred planet. They had built their temple above the ruins of human civilization, never knowing that Earth's children had been there first. The implications were staggering. If this was a human world, then humans had a legal claim to it that predated the Kethran Empire by tens of thousands of years. But more than that, the existence of this ancient city proved that humanity belonged among the stars. They had been here before, and now they were coming home. Dr. Ben Carter stood before the Kethran Leadership Council with his data pad in hand. The great hall of their temporary government building was impressive, with high ceilings and walls decorated with religious symbols. But Carter felt no fear as he faced the alien leaders who had claimed this world. High Priest Murthic sat on his ceremonial throne, his forearms folded across his chest. His dark blue skin seemed to shimmer in the artificial light, and his eyes showed the arrogance of someone who had never been challenged. Beside him sat Admiral Vextar and the other military commanders who controlled the Kethran fleet. "You requested this meeting, human," Murthic said, his voice carrying the tone of someone granting a favor to a lesser being. "Speak quickly, we have important work to do." Carter activated his data pad and projected the images onto the room's display screen. The star charts appeared first, showing the detailed maps they had found in the underground city. "These are navigation charts we discovered beneath the surface of your world," Carter began. "They show detailed knowledge of star systems across this entire region of the galaxy." Admiral Vextar leaned forward with interest. "You found these underground. How deep?" 3 kilometers below the surface. The chamber where we found them is part of a vast city that has been buried for tens of thousands of years." Murthic waved one of his hands dismissively. "Impossible. We scanned this world completely before claiming it. There were no signs of previous civilization. The city is very old and very deep," Carter replied. "Your scans wouldn't have detected it unless you were specifically looking for buried structures." Carter changed the display to show the photographs of the ancient chamber. The alien leader stared at the images of advanced technology and architectural wonders that clearly showed intelligent design. "Interesting," Admiral Vextar admitted, "but this proves nothing. Many species have risen and fallen over the millennia. Finding old ruins doesn't change our legal claim to this world." "It does if those ruins belong to my species," Carter said. Quietly, the room fell silent. High Priest Murthic's eyes narrowed dangerously. "What did you say?" "Human." Carter projected the image of the star chart with Earth's sun marked in special symbols. "This navigation chart centers on Sol, the star system where Earth is located. The markings indicate that whoever built this city considered that system to be their home." "You're suggesting these ruins are human?" Vextar asked. "I'm not suggesting it. I'm stating it as fact. The writing system matches ancient human scripts. The star charts focus on human space. The architectural style, while advanced, shows clear human design principles." Murthic rose from his throne, his forearms spreading wide in a gesture of anger. "This is fabrication. Humans have only been in space for a few hundred years. Your species was primitive where we were already building star fleets. Our current civilization is young." Carter agreed, "but the evidence shows that an earlier human civilization existed tens of thousands of years ago. They built this city, and many others like it across the galaxy." "Lies," Murthic shouted. "You're making false claims to steal our sacred world." Carter remained calm in the face of the priest's anger. "The evidence speaks for itself. This world was a human colony long before your species achieved spaceflight. We have prior claim." Admiral Vextar stood up slowly. Unlike the priest, he was a military man who understood the implications of what Carter was saying. If the humans could prove their claim, it would undermine Kethran territorial rights throughout the region. "Even if what you say is true," Vextar said carefully, "your ancient civilization is gone. Dead species cannot claim territory." "But we're not dead," Carter replied. "We're the descendants of the people who built this city. We never abandoned our claim to this world. We just forgot where it was." The argument continued for hours. Murthic refused to believe that humans could have built anything so advanced. Vextar was more concerned about the legal and military implications. Other Kethran officials asked, technical questions about the archaeological evidence. Meanwhile, Jake Murphy was receiving an emergency communication from Earth Command. Word of the discovery had reached human space, and the reaction was immediate and dramatic. Admiral Tom Bradley was already on his way with a fleet of human ships, including the powerful battleship USS Constitution. Earth's government had declared Ketha Prime to be human territory based on the archaeological evidence, and they were prepared to enforce that claim. How long until Admiral Bradley arrives? Ambassador Kate Johnson asked. For days, Jake replied. He's bringing significant firepower. Johnson looked worried. The Kethrans have 12 ships in orbit, including those battleships. If this turns into a shooting war, we could lose badly, maybe, Jake said. But we have something they don't know about. He was thinking about the ancient city beneath their feet. Carter's team had been working around the clock to activate more of the buried technology. Each day brought new discoveries and new capabilities that had been sleeping for millennia. Dr. Carter returned from his meeting with the Kethran leadership looking frustrated but determined. They're not going to give up the world voluntarily, he reported. Murtha called me a liar and threatened to have us removed from the planet. What about Admiral Vextar? He's more reasonable, but he won't act against the High Priest. The Kethrans see this as their most sacred world. They're not going to abandon it based on our word alone. Jake made a decision that would change everything. Then we need to give them proof they can't ignore. That evening, Jake and Carter descended back into the ancient city. They had been working to activate the buried systems, but so far, they had only managed to restore basic lighting and life support. The real technology, the systems that could prove human ownership of this world, remained dormant. Carter had found what appeared to be a main control center deep in the city's heart. The chamber was filled with advanced computers and control panels that were far beyond anything either humans or Kethrans currently possessed. But they were all dark and silent. There has to be a way to wake up the main systems, Carter said. Studying the central control panel, the city was designed to respond to its builders. Jake placed his hand on the smooth surface of the control panel. Nothing happened for a moment. Then suddenly the panel began to glow with soft blue light. Symbols appeared on screens throughout the chamber, and the sound of machinery humming to life echoed through the ancient corridors. How did you do that? Carter asked in amazement. I don't know, Jake replied, staring at his hand. It just felt right. Throughout the buried city, systems that had been dormant for 50,000 years began to activate. Lights came on in distant chambers, and computers started processing information. Most importantly, the city's main defense and communication systems began their startup sequences. On the surface, both human and Kethran sensors detected the massive energy signatures coming from deep underground. The readings were unlike anything either species had ever seen, showing technology that made their best equipment look primitive. Admiral Vextar stared at his instruments in disbelief. What are the humans doing down there? High Priest Murthic was less concerned with the technical readings than with the threat to his authority. Whatever they're doing, stop them. This is our sacred world, and I will not allow these primitives to defile it with their tricks. But as the ancient human city continued to wake up, it became clear that neither species was in control of what was happening. The sleeping giant beneath Ketha Prime was finally stirring, and when it fully awakened, everything would change. The confrontation between humans and Kethrans was about to become something much bigger than a simple territorial dispute. The ancient city was preparing to announce its presence to the galaxy, and with it, the return of humanity to the stars. The ground began to shake as massive machines deep beneath the planet's surface came to life. Jake Murphy felt the vibrations through his boots as he stood in the control center of the ancient human city. All around him, displays showed systems activating that had been dormant for tens of thousands of years. Jake, you need to see this. Dr. Ben Carter called from across the chamber. His voice was filled with wonder and fear in equal measure. Jake hurried over to Carter's station, where multiple screens showed what was happening on the surface. The planet itself was changing. Huge structures were rising from the ground, pushing through kilometers of soil and rock as if they weighed nothing at all. What are those things? Jake asked. Planetary defense systems, Carter replied, reading the ancient text that was scrolling across his screen. The city's main computer is identifying them as shield generators and communication rays. On the surface, both human and Kethran forces watched in amazement as the mysterious structures continued to emerge. They were made of the same unknown metal as the buried city, gleaming silver in the sunlight. Some were tall towers that reached toward the sky like fingers. Others were dome-shaped buildings that seemed to pulse with inner light. Admiral Tom Bradley had arrived with his fleet just hours before the awakening began. The USS Constitution and 5 other human ships hung in orbit, facing off against 12 Kethran vessels. Both fleets had been preparing for battle when the planet itself had joined the fight. "Sir, we're reading massive energy signatures from the surface," reported Bradley's science officer. "Whatever those structures are, they're generating more power than our entire fleet combined." Admiral Vextar was getting similar reports from his own ships. The Kethran admiral stared at the main screen, watching structures emerge from the ground near his own settlement. His people were running in panic as buildings that had stood for months were gently but firmly moved aside by the rising machines. "Are they weapons?" he asked his tactical officer. "Unknown, sir. The energy patterns don't match anything in our database." High Priest Murthic was furious. He stood in his partially constructed temple, watching as one of the mysterious towers rose from the ground just outside his walls. The perfect symmetry of his sacred building was being ruined by this alien technology. "Destroy them," he commanded. "Fire on those structures immediately." But when the Kethran ships targeted the towers with their weapons, they found their shots blocked by shimmering energy shields. The defensive barriers appeared around each structure the moment they were threatened, deflecting the alien weapons harmlessly into space, deep underground. Jake and Carter watched the battle through the city's sensors. The ancient defense systems were working perfectly, protecting the rising structures without causing harm to the attacking ships. "The shields are incredibly advanced," Carter observed. "They're not just blocking the weapons. They're analyzing the attack patterns and adapting to them." Jake studied the tactical displays. "It's like the city is trying not to hurt anyone. It could destroy those ships easily, but it's just defending itself." Ambassador Kate Johnson's voice crackled over the communicators. "Jake, what's happening down there?" "The Kethrans are demanding that we shut down whatever we've activated. We're not controlling this." Jake replied, "The city is running its own programs. We're just along for the ride." As more structures emerged across the planet's surface, something even more remarkable began to happen. The ancient machines started working to restore the world to its original state. Soil analysis systems emerged from underground, testing the composition of the Earth. Atmospheric processors began adjusting the air to optimal levels. Weather control stations started moderating the climate. The Kethran settlement found itself in the middle of the most advanced terraforming operation either species had ever seen. Buildings were carefully relocated to designated areas without damage to their contents. People were gently moved to safety by floating platforms that appeared whenever someone was in danger. "It's not trying to drive us away," Admiral Vextar realized. "It's trying to accommodate us." The most impressive sight was the Great Communication Array that rose from the center of the main continent. The tower stretched 10 kilometers into the sky, its crystalline tip gleaming like a star. When it reached full height, it began broadcasting a signal that could be heard across the entire galaxy. Jake and Carter listened to the transmission from their underground control center. The message was being sent in dozens of languages, including modern human and Kethran dialects that the ancient computers had somehow learned by analyzing their communications. "This is Terra Nova, the third colony of the human galactic commonwealth," the message began. "After 50,000 years of dormancy, our systems have detected the return of human presence to this world. We welcome home the children of Earth and invite them to reclaim their ancestral territory." The broadcast continued, explaining the history of the ancient human civilization. It told of a great empire that had spanned thousands of worlds before some catastrophic event had forced humanity to retreat to their origin planet. Terra Nova had been one of their most important colonies, a world where they had tested their most advanced technologies. Admiral Bradley listened to the transmission with growing amazement. "Are you receiving this, Admiral Vextar?" "We hear it," the Kethran commander replied, "but it changes nothing. We claimed this world legally under galactic law." "Did you?" Bradley asked. "Because according to this broadcast, humans were here 50,000 years before your species achieved spaceflight." On the surface, Ambassador Johnson was trying to manage a situation that had grown far beyond anything she had been trained for. The Kethran colonists were confused and frightened by the rising structures, while her own human team was overwhelmed by the implications of their discovery. "Hi!" Priest Murthic stormed into the human compound, his forearms gesturing angrily. "You must shut down these machines immediately. They are defiling our sacred world." "We're not controlling them," Johnson replied calmly. "The systems are operating on their own programming. Then find a way to stop them. Why would we want to stop them? They're not hurting anyone. In fact, they seem to be improving the planet." As if to prove her point, one of the ancient machines approached their location. It was a floating device about the size of a small building, equipped with multiple arms and sensors. The machine began working on the soil around the human compound, enriching it with nutrients and planting seeds that would grow into Earth-compatible vegetation. Carter emerged from the underground city to witness the transformation taking place above ground. Everywhere he looked, the ancient machines were working to restore Terra Nova to its former glory. Rivers were being cleaned, forests were being replanted, and the air itself was becoming purer. "It's beautiful," he said to Jake over the communicator. "They're turning this world into paradise." Jake was studying the main control systems deep underground. "Ben, I think I understand what happened to the original colonists." "What do you mean?" "The records show that something called the Great Silence occurred about 50,000 years ago. It wasn't a war or a disaster. It was a choice." Carter hurried back underground to see what Jake had discovered. The ancient computers had unlocked more of their archives, revealing the final chapters of the human galactic commonwealth. "They saw something coming," Jake explained. "A threat that would challenge everything they believed about civilization. So they made a decision. They would abandon their empire and return to Earth, waiting until humanity was ready to face that threat." "What kind of threat?" Jake pointed to star charts showing the galaxy. 50,000 years ago, something from outside our galaxy, something that made them decide that the human race needed to grow stronger before it could be trusted with galactic civilization. And now the computers think we're ready. That's why they're awakening. Terra Nova is calling humans back to the stars. On the surface, Admiral Vextar faced the most difficult decision of his career. His weapons were useless against the ancient defenses, and his government would never forgive him if he started a war he couldn't win. But the Kethrans had invested too much in this world to simply abandon it. Ambassador Johnson offered him a solution. Our species could share this world. The ancient system seemed designed to accommodate multiple civilizations. Share our sacred world with humans. It was their world first. We're offering to let you stay. Admiral Vextar looked at the rising towers and the machines that were transforming the planet into something more beautiful than it had been before. His military mind recognized superior technology when he saw it. Fighting the humans now would be suicide. "I will need to consult with my superiors," he said finally. High Priest Murthic was less willing to compromise. "Never. This is our sacred world. I will not share it with these primitives." But even as he spoke, the ancient machines were working around his temple. They weren't destroying it, but they were incorporating it into their own designs. The Kethran building was becoming part of a larger complex that would serve both species. Deep underground, Jake stood in the heart of the awakened city and felt the weight of history on his shoulders. Humanity had been among the stars before, and now they were being invited to return. The galaxy that had seemed so empty and hostile suddenly felt like home. "Terra Nova is calling us back," he said to Carter. "After 50,000 years, we're finally ready to reclaim our place in the galaxy above ground." The great communication tower continued broadcasting its message to the stars. Soon, human ships from across known space would begin arriving to resettle their ancestral world. The age of humanity's return to the galaxy had begun, and Terra Nova would be the first step in reclaiming their ancient heritage among the stars.